going to be talking about proteins. I think last week we covered, just kind of like my take, and as well as like a little history lesson on pre-workout. So if you guys have not seen that podcast, if you guys have not, if you didn't catch it last week on the live, it's actually on the Gym Army Facebook group page right now. Thank you to LaTanya Roberts, Don McNally, Dylan Crenshaw, Will Kacharik, you guys joining us. Thank you so much. I will get to questions after the podcast is over with and the topic. So make sure if you guys have questions, you just kind of put them in the comment section, and then I'll go back through and I will go ahead and answer those questions. And then anybody who I answer the questions, typically I always like to give something away. So, I'll be probably giving away some product here for you guys who are participating and willing to stick with me through this. So let's just kind of jump into it. So last week we talked about pre-workouts and how I truly have a problem with a lot of these high stimulant pre-workouts, and it's nothing new. I went through the history of pre-workouts, where they actually came from, where they originated from. I didn't get too deep into the history and the timeline of them, but essentially pre-workouts, became a thing when BSN came out with their product Vtrix, and then led into NO Explode, and bodybuilding.com was really the first place where they invented the term pre-workout. Before pre-workouts, there were things like the nitric oxide boosters. If you guys remember, it was like NO2, it was just alpha ketoglutarate, AKG. And then you had, some other things like from Twin Lab. I'm trying to remember back in the day, but you had these categories. Creatine monohydrate's been around for a long time, whey protein, your fat burners, Rip Fuel, that's what it was, Rip Fuel from Twin Lab. So you had a lot of these different products that people took. It was like, you could buy branched amino acids, you could buy creatine, but no one really knew specifically or had a formula for some of these pre-workouts until BSN really was the one who kind of came out with the first pre-workout. But that also exposed the category to allow other products coming into the marketplace that really didn't have a home. And some of these high stimulant products that were just meant for like mental acuity and kind of giving people that flavor and feel approach. So I mentioned last week that it really started for me when I started in 2002 2003 in the industry. Pre-workouts were just starting to become a thing. There really wasn't a pre-workout category. It was on the heels of the creatine, the Rip Fuel, even ephedra. Ephedra was kind of like the thing prior to pre-workouts, and when ephedra got banned, that is what opened the door for a new way to try and give people something that they could take before a workout. So then the mixture of some of these things were kind of put into the pot, if you will, and it became a category. And so, but some of these other products that got thrown into the category are now kind of resurfacing. And you see some of these brands talking about high stim pre-workouts. And as I mentioned last week, that the stimulants affect the central nervous system. They have nothing to do with the muscle tissue. Stimulants have nothing to do to enhance nutrients that get into the muscle when you're working out by way of the blood. So when you want a true pre-workout, when you want something that's going to increase strength, increase endurance, increase muscle elasticity over the pump, to where you actually have more blood and nutrients that actually send a nitric oxide response that happens in the body to, make you feel good, make you less tired. That's going to be things like creatine, things like branched amino acids. Branched amino acids are probably one of the most important ingredients that should be in a pre-workout because it prevents fatigue. Valine specifically in the branched amino acids prevents fatigue. So while some people, what will happen with a high stimulant pre-workout when you have certain things like a high dose of caffeine, we're talking, 400 milligrams of caffeine, some even have higher. There's limitations based on regulations that exist in the industry, but some of those companies, what they do is they get away with it. They'll put like a high dose of caffeine and then put like a time release caffeine, and that's kind of like a workaround so they can get a higher level of caffeine in there. But caffeine really isn't even a stimulant in, from my standpoint or Jim's standpoint. Caffeine actually has benefits in strength. So what they'll do is they'll put in other ingredients like, yohimbe, which I think is ridiculous to have in a pre-workout because it has nothing beneficial into increasing strength and, endurance. And yohimbe is an ingredient that is in a fat burner. It actually has fat burning principles, but that's not necessarily what you want to do. You're going to be burning fat when you work out. So branched chain amino acids and creatine are actually a combination that give you the clean energy. So when people talk about clean energy coming from pre-gym, and when we first came to the market, I'll never forget, it was like thousands and thousands of comments saying the clean energy. And the reason for it is because we're the first product to really have that combination of an adequate dose and a effective dose of creatine and an effective and clinical dose of branched chain amino acids. And those two ingredients, there's actually a synergy between them. If you're taking creatine by itself, creatine has a hard time being absorbed by the body because there's multiple benefits of the branched amino acids, and that kind of leads into the protein, which I'm going to get into. But 'cause I know that's what this podcast is supposed to be, is about protein. But there's a story that kind of comes with it. So the leucine spikes insulin, which helps that creatine get absorbed by the body, because you have to have an insulin spike in order to take advantage of a lot of the nutrients. If you ever look at, like, I'm looking at a door here, right? If I wanted to walk through that door, if my name is creatine or other nutrients and that door is shut, like, I have a hard time. I can work myself into the cracks or something like that, but the insulin spike is the key that opens the door that allows me to walk into that room. And essentially that's the way it works in the body, is that leucine it causes an insulin spike. Same thing with dextrose, fast digesting carbs, causes an insulin spike. Sodium, same thing. There's other ingredients too, but those are like the three that you're going to look for. I don't know if you guys remember Cell Tech by Muscle Tech. It was there. That was kind of like before the pre-workout, right? So Cell Tech and Nitro Tech. Nitro Tech was the protein. Cell Tech was creatine monohydrate and 25 grams of dextrose. If you guys remember Cell Tech back in the day, but it worked. It was monohydrate and sugar, fast digesting carbs in a tub. And it sold for like, $35-40. And then you could get, the Nitro Tech, which was their protein at the time. You took those two things together and they worked. Although Nitro Tech did use the type of protein, which I'll get to, which I don't think is necessarily a good choice. But, for the young guys, like I remember being in college, I was taking Nitro Tech and Cell Tech. And I, was putting on weight, and a lot of it was water weight, of course, but I felt good. And the reason why is because the dextrose in there in combination with the creatine, it worked. So why don't pre-workouts have creatine and branched amino acids in them? And the real reason is because of cost. Companies work around that because they look at the cost. They're expensive ingredients, they're expensive nutrients, and they leave them out. So what they do is they substitute the nutrients that are essentially expensive that actually have true benefits, and then they substitute them in for the feel-good ingredients, which are essentially cheap. And trust me when I tell you, I own a supplement company. Stimulants are a hell of a lot cheaper than nutrients. You want to buy kilos of creatine and branched amino acids, they sell them they're a lot more expensive than the stimulants. And plus stimulants, it's just easier to flavor because there's less of it in there. That's the reason why you see some of these pre-workouts and they do certain things to where they mislead the consumers by saying you can take 1 scoop or 2 scoops. It's so they can say that they're selling a 40 serving, when realistically to get the effective dose, you got to take 2 scoops. So why do they do that? It's a trick that a lot of these brands do and use to work around. Again, they're always trying to find workarounds from regulation standards as well as to consumer ignorance. So those are the things that have kind of resurfaced because there's really no gold standard anymore that you can turn to find out what the truth is when it comes behind supplements. And that's really what I'm here for, is I'm here to try and give you guys insight and answer questions based on, not even myself, but my business partner, Dr. Jim Stoppani. I've been working with him for over 23 years, and I've learned a lot, and I'm able to ask questions on behalf of the consumers. And that's the real reason why we have the Gym Army Consumer, is because I'm your advocate. And, there's some things I get wrong, some things that I might, not fully understand. but I try to admit that and then go and find the correct answer. Unfortunately, I have the source of that information and is my business partner, Dr. Jim Stoppani. So with that long introduction that's been going on with everything, let me get into some of the stuff regarding protein powders. I want to talk about organic whey proteins. I want to talk about just regular whey proteins, plant-based protein, as well as beef protein, because I think that those are some of the, categories that people look at when they are talking about getting proteins. Those are some of the options. I don't want to dive too much into collagen protein because I think that's essentially like a different category altogether. And so we can kind of make that separate, because I think that there are a lot of benefits from taking the collagen proteins for different purposes. And I don't think that they fall into the realm of, am I going to take collagen protein or am I going to take a whey protein? I think the four that I talked about, organic whey, just a whey protein, plant-based, and beef protein, I think those different categories of protein essentially compete with one another. And some are good, some are just, I think misunderstood by the consumer. So let's just start off with organic whey protein, okay? Because I think that that's something, as we see the culture shifting, which is a great thing. I think the culture from, some of the foods that we eat, excuse me, things are getting back or going towards the better path versus some of the other things. Like, we know that certain things in our foods and in what we consume is causing issues, specifically for our kids. I'm a father of 3, so I'm looking at things and have been for a long time. So actually, I think Coca-Cola just made an announcement recently that they're taking the high fructose corn syrup out of their formula and going back to cane sugar. Like, I think that's awesome. But it's important to also understand that while that is happening, which is great, and I think that getting some of the stuff out of the foods we eat and some of the things that we consume is exactly what it needs to happen. But I also think that it can open the door for that high alertness of consumers wanting something that they are going after to be organic, or whether or not it's good for you. I think that what happens all the time, and I've seen it in this industry more times than I care to remember, is that brands will take advantage of that term when it really has no meaning. And so they'll try and take advantage of, once again, consumer behavior, because the trend is going towards like inorganic or something like that. And so they'll try and use that term and try and use that category as a way to look like, they're different, right? That's what brands do, is they're always trying to find the advantage of how to be different and how to, compete and stand out. And, the reality is that it's hard. And I understand as a consumer to try and make sense out of all this. And that's really the reason why I always say we are the end of the rainbow brand, because the only reason why we're trying to stand out and how we do it is just by the very DNA in which we exist. Like, our brand was founded by myself and an actual research scientist who has been doing this for 20 plus years in the, in formulations and researching ingredients and having published studies. And so when it comes to supplementation, if you want to look at like the godfather of somebody who really understands formulation, Jim Stoppani stands right there. Dr. Jim Stoppani stands right there. And so the whole reason why we even started this was because we wanted to get out of the rat race of trying to work with brands who are essentially just not doing it correctly and missing the marker. So organic proteins, organic whey proteins, are they worth it? Does it make a difference if the protein is from a field where the cows are grazing and they're, grass-fed cows versus, the latter? The reality is a couple of things. One, if your products are manufactured in the U.S., which ours are, so our products are manufactured in the United States, right? So our co-manufacturers are, They're in the States. The dairies that they work with in order to get the milk that is then used to produce the whey, it's in the United States. So a lot of our manufacturer is the manufacturer for a lot of different protein brands and companies. The term organic they use to try and say that, well, their whey protein is organic. It's better than just, regular whey protein. The reality is there's really no difference. There's a good article that I have, which is on jimstoppani.com. It says organic whey, waste or worth it. So I'll read just a little bit of it, but as Jim says, he says, you have to consider where the benefits come from in the milk sourced from organically raised or grass-fed cows, as well as how the protein is manufactured. The main health benefits of milk that come from the organic and grass-fed cows are the higher amounts of essential omega-3 acids, the CLA, the vitamin E, but the way it's manufactured is that the whey is processed to isolate the protein from the carbs and the fat. That's where you're just trying to focus on the protein. So a quality whey protein isolate, like what we have, and I'm going to get to that. So we only use whey protein isolates. We're trying to remove like 100% of the fat and the carbs. So that's what you're getting, is you're trying to get to the isolated protein. And some brands, most brands, don't do that. Whether it's organic or whether it's not, they don't do that. They use a whey protein concentrate, which means it's a cheaper version of whey protein, okay? So organic or not, the organic part really doesn't matter because, the main benefits of that is the higher amounts of essential omega-3 fats, the CLA, the vitamin E. So as we're trying to work towards getting 100% of the protein and a higher amount of the protein, and 100% of the fat and the carbs removed, this means that if a protein powder manufacturer is using whey protein from organic milk, just about all of the extra omega-3 fats, the CLA, the vitamin E, have been removed during the manufacturing process. So what you're getting from the organic is the benefits being removed in the processing of the whey. So is it really organic? And is it worth it if you have to pay more to try and get to the organic level of the protein? You got to make your own decision, but this is just the information. So as Jim goes on, it says, so it actually makes 0 sense for the manufacturer to pay more for the whey protein from organic milk, given the fact that all the additional health benefits are going to be completely removed in the manufacturing process. So as Jim goes on, he says, well, what about the protein? Does the protein make a difference because it's organic protein? So the protein in the milk from organically raised and grass-fed cows has the same exact amino acid structure as protein in conventional milk. So when it goes through the process of the manufacturing, you end up with the exact same amino acid structure. Like the protein quality is the exact same whether or not it's from organic milk or grass-fed cows, okay? So the amino acids are amino acids. Like you can't change it. When you go through the filtering process, you end up with the same thing. There's nothing different. All the benefits from the organic milk have been removed in that process. So what are you left with? An amino acid structure. And they're identical. But you're going to pay more or use a feel good, like, well, it says organic on the bottle. And that's fine. If that's your decision, it makes you feel better, go to it. I'm just giving you the facts and the information. So as Jim goes on, well, what about the antibiotics, the hormones, the pesticides? So here's the deal with that, as Jim talks about here. None of those alter the structure of the whey protein molecules that are isolated from milk protein. So due to the processing that the whey undergoes to isolate just the whey protein from everything else in the milk, none of that stuff is left behind that makes it into the jug of the protein powder that you're buying. So again, there's no difference between regular whey protein and organic or grass-fed protein in regards to any of the, contaminants that you might think that are being there. So last question on this is like, if the organic and grass-fed protein adds none of the beneficial nutrients, right? So those are removed. Removes any of the negative components from organic or just regular milk. Why would these manufacturers or these supplement companies offer it, right? Why would they do that? And there's two reasons that we can assume. One, they don't know any better, okay? Because many of these brands who have the organic, they go to a manufacturer, they don't have an expert on staff. Like 90% of the companies out there, they don't have like a guy like Jim. They just don't, especially at the helm. So when they sit down and talk about a manufacturer, they go in with an idea. Now the manufacturer manufactures hundreds of different brands, right? They don't, they're like, all right, we're going to that's why a lot of the jugs are the same. Like honestly, some of our competition manufacturers in the same facility that we do. The difference is what I'll get to is we're a little bit different, okay? In the sense of the ingredients that we use. Like we don't run the line. I should tell you that. So, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But so one, the only reason why they do it is because they don't fully understand what I just outlined. You can say organic, sure, but from the end consumer of what they're getting, what they're paying for, there's no difference. So some of it could just be they don't know any better, right? Or ignorance. The other thing is that they actually do know better, but they know that they're banking on the consumers being ignorant. So it's one of the two, right? Either they're ignorant or they're hoping that you are. And that's really what it comes down to. And again, if you feel better about buying something that says organic on it, then fine. I look back on, if you guys have ever seen Tommy Boy, right? He goes, well, there's no guarantee on the box. He goes, well, I could sell you, a guaranteed piece of shit, or you could just buy a quality product from me. That's like exactly what I think of. It's like, just because if it makes you feel better to have something that states something to make you feel warm and fuzzy at night, hey, look, that's your call. But when it comes down to the actual true benefits, as I just outlined to you, and the article is on jimstoppani.com if you're not a member, so you guys can read it for yourself. And, there is, so it's called Organic Whey, Waste or Worth It. And if you don't have a membership to jimstoppani.com, you should get one. So it's not just content, it's workout programs, it's everything on the Jim Stoppani app. But all these articles are actually free. You guys can just actually Google it, Organic Whey, Waste or Worth It. It should pop up in Google for you. So that's Organic Whey. So moving from the organic whey into just whey protein, so when you see certain things, these are different proteins on here. So you have Optimum Nutrition, 100% whey, Dimetizes, ISO 100, two, great companies, Optimum has really, they were an account of mine when I was at Muscle and Fitness, same with Dimetize. So I worked with both of these brands, and Dimetize, it was Mike, what were their names? Anyway, good dudes, but I've known them for a long time. They no longer own Dimetize. I think they've sold it since then. But and these, not just these two, but these are examples. Those are some of the brands that you see out there on the market. ISO 100, hydrolyzed, gold standard, 100% whey protein, right? So no matter what any brand calls their protein, right, on the front of the label, what do you want to look for when you're talking about the best type of protein? And I'm actually going to search this real quick here so I can have some facts, data, research, information on this, but blends are better. Here we go. All right. So when you look at a whey protein, first of all, there's a couple things to make sure. It's like a 3-step process to really understand and find out like what is the best type of protein that you need to be consuming. So we talked about organic whey. My opinion, not worth it. Doesn't add any benefits. It's still protein. It's at the end of the day, the structure of organic milk or non-organic milk, where the protein's coming from. At the end of the day, you're left with the same exact thing, the same exact amino acid structure, which is essentially what you want. But regular protein. So if you kind of don't buy into the organic side of the protein, and you're like, okay, well then what type of protein? And again, I am not just telling you to look at our brand as the end all be all. I'm just giving you the facts, and I hope other brands are willing to kind of do this too. So this was looking at protein. You got to look on the back of the label, okay? So if you look on the back of the label, every single protein powder, you have Optimum, you have the protein facts panel, the nutritional facts panel here. Some of them say nutritional facts, some of them say supplement facts. So if you look at Optimum, it says nutritional facts, and like ours, it says supplement facts, right? So the supplement facts panel, and Dymatize here says nutritional facts. So there is a difference between that, because supplement facts, it's in the supplement side of the regulations. Nutritional, it kind of falls into the food category. So that's a little bit, it's not, for the purposes of this, it's not necessarily, one or the other. But looking at these three labels, what you want to do is you want to go down under the ingredients. And this is where the important part is. Most people are starting to pay more attention to ingredients. Start familiarizing yourself with that and look at the ingredients. And what you want to look for is, what type of protein are they using? Regardless of what the front of the label says, this is gold standard 100% whey. Ours is ProGym. Dymatize is ISO 100 hydrolyzed. It doesn't matter what any of that says on the front. Turn it around and look at the back and look for ingredients, okay? And what you want to look for is isolates, the word isolates. Whey protein isolate, right? Other high quality isolates, right? And I'll explain those in a second, like casein protein. If you see whey protein concentrate listed, what is that? Whey protein concentrate, let's just talk about economics. Whey protein concentrate is the cheapest type of protein that I can buy to use in my product. If I were to say, we're just going to start using whey protein concentrate, I would make a lot more money by selling that to you. Okay, let me say that again. If I were to use whey protein concentrate in my protein powder, it is cheaper for me to buy it. I would still sell it to you, and then I would make more money. Okay? That is true. I don't use whey protein concentrate, and Jim and I don't use whey protein concentrate, and Jim and I will never use whey protein concentrate, because I take my own products. Dr. Jim Stoppani takes his own products. So what's the problem with whey protein concentrate? Well, it's not that there's a problem. It's just you have to be informed of what that is. When you look at protein, there's a percentage of protein that is measured based on a scoop size, right? So whey protein concentrate is on the lower side of the percentage of protein than an isolate. As I mentioned, isolate protein is trying to extract 100% of the fats and the carbs out of the filter within the filtration process, right? To just get as close to 100%. 90% is, or better is usually the ratio. If you're taking whey protein isolate, which, Dymatize is a 100, this is a whey protein. I mean, they're using hydrolyzed whey protein, which I will get into. But, whey protein isolate, that's what this is. This is an isolate protein. So they've isolated the protein, extracting out the carbs and the fats. So what does that mean? Well, anyone who's taken protein powder and started taking or has been taking for a long time, how many of you are like, well, protein powder, yeah, if you're going to start taking it, be ready for the protein farts, or you're going to be, that's why. The vast majority of people, especially in the Western civilization, have some form of sensitivity to lactose intolerant. And you don't have to be completely lactose intolerant, but in some cases it messes with your stomach. when you have the lactose in there and it's not removed, and that's why you're running to the bathroom. It's a lower quality, in my opinion, protein. It's cheaper because there's less of what you think you're getting in there, which is the percentage of protein. You want the highest percentage of protein. So whey protein concentrate we don't use because of the high amounts of lactose in there. So whey protein concentrate, you're getting anywhere between, ratios. It could range. And there's different qualities based on whey protein concentrate and where you get it from. You can get higher quality, which is around, 70%, 80% protein at best. So it varies. And it's cheaper. And that's the reason why most brands use it. Now, is there anything wrong with it? No, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you're getting more lactose, and you can cause, and if you want to consume the amount of protein you should, you're drinking 3 to 4 shakes per day of, whey protein concentrate. You're going to be spending a lot of time in the bathroom. So the choice is yours. So we don't use whey protein concentrate, but that's where you want to look for it. Is you want to look for it on the back, underneath the supplement or nutritional facts, under ingredients. And if you see whey protein concentrate, just know what that is. It's a cheaper source of protein. The protein manufacturer is making more money, which is great. I'm all about companies. I want to make more money. I would love to make more money. But the reason why I'm not sitting in a 40,000 square foot facility right now, as opposed to where we're at now, is because we don't make decisions based on those type of standards. We make decisions based on what we want for ourselves. And, so I don't want my products to be cheaper just for the sake of making more money because I take them. I mean, I give this stuff to my kids. So, my son, he's 12 years old, and I'm like, hey, dude, you got to get in your protein. So, and his friends, the same thing. So because there's an extension beyond just the average consumer, I put myself out there. Jim puts himself out there. We want you guys to see who's behind the brands and making the decisions. I don't have Coca-Cola or Monster or Dr. Pepper or Anheuser-Busch or these massive, companies out there essentially making decisions for me based on what we put in our products, because the numbers dictate what percentage of profitability that they want. Remember that this brand is not owned or financed by some, multinational corporation or larger food company, because that's where it's going. A lot of these companies, look, somebody comes in, offers me 1.6 billion. Hey, I'm out, right? But I'll tell you guys I'm out. But that's what's happened. Like if you look at some of these brands, they're financed by some heavy hitters, and that's wonderful. I think that's good. But at the same time, decisions aren't being made down. It's like, who cares about the little guy, right? Well, the little guy is the average consumer, the person who just wants to get something based on their results. So from the ground floor up, that's what you guys have. Is you guys have myself, you guys have Jim, because we're the end all be all when it comes to, what goes into the products in terms of a formulation standpoint. Now, are we in there in the manufacturing facility mixing this stuff up and all that? No. But when we work with our co-manufacturers to make sure that the quality nutrients, and it comes out testing, and we make sure that every standard is met with rigorous testing, things like that. So we get all our C of A's, and the information to make sure that every batch it meets the quality and the standards in which are on the label. So that's what whey protein concentrate is we don't use any of that, and we won't. So just real quick, I know it's going on, but let's get right into plant-based protein, okay? Plant-based protein. There's nothing wrong. You're vegan. We actually have a plant-based protein, right? So Plant Gym was something that we came out with a couple of years ago. And so same type of thing, we only use isolates in our plant-based protein. So if you look, same down here, same thing, you will look under the nutrition facts panel or the supplement facts panel. And, so we use pea protein isolate, rice protein isolate, which are the two sources of protein from plants. So it's not coming from whey, it's not coming from milk. So if you're vegan or, you can't That's the other thing too. Most people who drink plant-based protein, their reasoning for that is because they say, well, I can't drink whey protein because it messes with my stomach. Yeah, you can. If you're not doing it because you're vegan or you're vegetarian or whatever it is, or you some other issue. But if you're saying I can only drink plant protein because the whey messes with my stomach, go back to an isolate. Pick up ProGym. Okay. The reason why your stomach is hurting again is because the protein that you're probably taking, which pushed you to a plant protein, I guarantee was whey protein concentrate. Guaranteed. Or at least that would be the most likely reason why your stomach would be upset. So plant-based protein, perfectly fine. You know, what I would say is the same thing. Look for the term isolate. It's the same thing. If you're not isolating the protein, the byproducts of wherever source of protein you're getting, or, you know, whatever source you're using to get the protein is not the same. So you're getting a lower percentage of protein if it's not isolated. So we only use pea protein isolates, right? Rice protein isolates. That term isolate's important to look for because it tells you that that company went the extra step to try and isolate the protein so that you're getting the highest percentage possible. So that's plant-based protein, no different. You want the isolate. Now, with that being said, plant-based protein, and the vast majority of it out there, the problem with it is that it's not anabolic, okay? That means is that the plant-based protein doesn't have the naturally occurring amino acid structure that whey protein does. Why is that important? Because the naturally occurring amino acids, such as, you know, lysine, leucine, you know, the essential amino acids that you essentially get from whey, which is naturally occurring in that source of protein, is lacking in plant-based. So you don't get the insulin spike. You don't get the anabolic factors that help the protein unless you have a plant protein that has a separate amino acid structure or label on it that tells you, hey, we know that the plant protein is lacking. So what we've done is we've added in additional amino acids to make up for the difference of what is not naturally occurring in that plant protein. If a company and on their label doesn't have an additional amino acid structure, so this is what you're saying, typical amino acid profile. We're telling you how much leucine is in here, isoleucine and valine. That's essentially the three branching amino acids, which are very important. But so we've infused our protein with additional amino acids so that this is like, as Jim says, it's like the most anabolic plant protein on the market. You know, are there other plant proteins out there that do this? I'm sure some do. I haven't taken the time to go through and look at all of them, but I can tell you that a lot of them don't. So if you're taking a plant protein, you know, you want to make sure that number one is that they're using isolates. So look for things like, you know, the word plant, you know, protein is like, you know, rice protein isolate, pea protein isolate. You want to look for those type of isolates. And that tells you that there's a higher percentage of protein that company took the extra step to extract out all the other stuff that you don't want, focus on the protein. But when it comes to a plant protein, in addition to that, you should start looking for, is there an additional place that they've added in or infused their protein, additional amino acids to help get that protein be anabolic. So whey protein is anabolic, right? Because there's naturally occurring amino acids that are in whey. There are not in plant protein, so you have to add that in. Essentially, you have to spike plant protein in order to make it anabolic. And so in the last, real quick, is beef protein. Okay, I want to cover this just briefly. There's not a lot to it, but beef protein. So you see some brands saying, hey, beef protein, beef protein, beef protein. It's not beef. So okay? Jim talked about this in a podcast with the fat to fit to fit to fat guy, or I forget, how it goes, but basically I forget his name, but Jim talked about this where he goes, that beef, because this guy was just saying the same thing. Well, I take beef protein, and Jim kind of looks at him and goes, well, that's not beef, right? And he goes, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, it's like, he goes, let me be clear. They're not taking chicken or fish or steak and grinding it up into a powdery substance to where you're getting the same benefits that you are from eating a steak or eating chicken or, eating, fish, where like, that's not what that is, right? Beef protein, bovine, those things, it's like, that's like the cartilage, the joints, like it's not beef, just so everybody knows that. So that's the real ticket. Now, there are articles that Jim has on this. Jim's actually talked about this. So if you guys haven't, head over to Jim's YouTube. You can search up all this stuff on his YouTube channel. Dr. Jim Stoppani has it all there. So with that, those are kind of the 4 topics I wanted to cover. I didn't get into protein spiking. I think that needs to be another topic just discussed on its own. If you don't know what that is, there's some great videos where Jim's talked about that 13 years ago, about protein spiking and the problems and issues with that, because there are some indicators that it's coming back. There's just some workarounds that a lot of these brands are doing in order, to not get caught. And also, I did not get into, which I wanted to get into protein blends as opposed to just, whey protein isolate or, 100% protein. So whey protein blends are a true whey protein blend is a blend of different digesting proteins, fast, slow digesting proteins being blended together as opposed to just fast digesting proteins or taking a slow digesting protein separately. There's benefits to that.